All right, so tonight we're going to talk about socialization and how it's more than just making friends. So, what is socialization? What are our goals for our children? Why is it more challenging? We're going to look at taking speculation out of the question, role models for our children, the gradual release of responsibility. We're going to hear suggestions straight from the source, from other children that have a hearing loss. And we're going to look at tools for success. So what is socialization? Socialization is knowing what kinds of behavior are acceptable with different people at different times in different places. Or complying with what peers or adults expect of you in those different expectations or in different circumstances. Being able to interact with others and carry on a conversation and participate within the guidelines of that situation. Knowing what actions or reactions will cause distress in others and having the impulse control to refrain from doing that. To respect others, their likenesses and differences, their circumstances and feeling, and what is important to them. And to care and trust in a way that allows the formation of friendships. If our children heard things as their hearing peers would or do, this would be an entirely different presentation. However, that is not the case. Social skills and the struggle to acquire them is not necessarily startlingly news. Children all exhibit a varying degree of social skills in different settings, but my emphasis is that developmental phases occur, and children with less ability to hear can't process the changes around them, such as how children react to a burp or how teachers reprimand a group at the water fountain, or even the game at tag at recess. These social skills might have to be taught directly, not assuming that they have been overheard or picked up from being a group. And I actually just, had to step in with a game of Marco Polo in our backyard the other day because they wanted Jack to be Marco. I had to clarify with them that that wasn't possible. Kids who are deaf or hard of hearing have a hard enough time in the world sometimes without being the sort of person that people don't want to be around. Understanding social conventions and being polite smooths the way for their participation in extended family, community, and most importantly in the workplace. They can be successful adults. Dependability, responsibility, reliability, loyalty, patience, they all develop through trial and error as we pass through these developmental stages. Does hearing make a difference in these? Absolutely. Can children who are deaf and hard of hearing be taught these same concepts? Absolutely. So what are our goals for socialization? Do we want them to be able to make friends and have long-lasting relationships? Do we want them to be able to order their own food at dinner? Do we want them to feel included and as part of the family, part of the extended family? We want them to be a responsible, contributing member of society, to care about others while being the kind of person that others want to care for. We want them to be able to develop and maintain those lasting relationships. And so social inclusion is really the goal for our children. And children attain this by becoming responsible, caring members of a group, being somebody that others care about, by caring for others, and by being able to develop and maintain relationships. It's known that friendships can't be forced, but sometimes positive relationships do need to be facilitated. Children with a hearing loss might not know what a friend really is, or they might not know how to start the conversation. We may need to explain that a friend plays with you and has fun, that friends don't ask you to do things that may get them in trouble. and that friends are different, and that's okay, and they may have different interests and abilities, and that you have to respect them and work with them. Why is it important to have friends? Well, friendships can contribute to cognitive growth and also to the acquisition of social values and skills necessary for positive interactions. All kinds of relationships play an important part of a child's school education, and all aspects of the child's development are interdependent and must be integrated for learning to be meaningful. Research has shown that children in high school base their self-worth on their social contacts and not on their academics. Knowledge about people is not implicitly learned in deliberate teachings. It blossoms from their culture. Movies, fairy tales, family stories. This is how children learn about things away from themselves, away from their body. And the ability to get this information is critical. That's why we continue to share why it's so important to read to your children. By teaching our children that they are important to us and that they are productive beings enables them to branch out and take their show on the road. But this doesn't happen overnight. How long does it take you to learn a task or a new hobby or a sport? Be patient and remember that practice makes perfect. So we know that high self-esteem is important. How do we go about teaching it? Maybe start by asking your child for suggestions when planning an outing. Let them help make the shopping list or find the groceries in the store or create a list of things to take in a trip. Have specific things that the children must do on a regular basis in the classroom or at home. It's something that helps the child build a sense of self-worth and a feeling of belonging and being important and contributing to the family or the class. But also understand that consequences come from mistakes, and it's just part of the journey, and that we live and learn and move ahead. But it's also important for the children to learn success. But we got to remember that we keep our praise appropriate to the success of that situation. If they learn how to tie their shoes, we don't go out and buy them 15 more pairs of shoes. We appropriately praise them and move on. And then also look at the situation. Maybe, what you're doing, the child feels success at that situation, but it wasn't the outcome or the success that you were anticipating. And so recognize that success to them may look different from the success that you are expecting, and that you have to appropriately praise and recognize their feelings too. And always praise or criticize the action and not the child. Be respectful. So research shows that a person who is deaf or hard of hearing is more likely to lose a job because of social or personal reasons than for poor job performance. The lack of proper social skills and decision-making and goal-setting may produce students and young adults who will not be prepared to handle the real world. And I'll share, my father lost part of his hearing due to a car accident, and the stubborn gentleman does not want to do anything for it because he doesn't want it to age him. And as much as I argue with him about this, it has caused issues with him in the workplace because they feel that he is not social enough. And it's because he can't catch the whole conversation, and when he can't catch the whole conversation and he's not replying, it's just because of his hearing and it's not because of him. And this is the same struggles that our children face. So why is it more challenging with a child with hearing loss to develop those proper social skills? Challenges come from language development. It's the key to learning the ins and outs of social interaction. It is necessary to understand the social aspects of our society, and without language, there's no way to teach or for the child to learn the things that smooth the way for good interpersonal relationships. Communication delays the ability to interact with people. it's through that interaction that friendships build, and the depth of that friendship depends on the ability to communicate. A deep and lasting friendship cannot be sustained on a few words and pointing alone. It takes thinking outside of the box and the language of hearing. A limited experience with books is really what our teachers continue to share with us over and over, that we read and read and read again to our children. From this reading, that's how they, again, learn these social interactions and what is appropriate and how to care for somebody and share. And it's through these interactions that they get additional learning experiences. Because our children cannot hear, the incidental learning that takes place in the language of relationships doesn't really happen for them. They don't hear the tone of voice that may change, whether somebody's angry or trying to soothe someone's feelings. They don't benefit from their parents' model of how to disagree, compromise, and make up. And they often do not understand that even though somebody is angry, that person still loves them unconditionally. Our children typically have fewer opportunities to interact socially with others who share a common means of communication. Confidence comes from being a contributing member of a family. Our children are often not included in the day-to-day workings and responsibilities of a family. And I know this is not all in every case, but this may be the case that in the homes of families that we're working with, families may feel guilty about the hearing loss and therefore let that child not participate in the family as the other siblings may. They may have more leniency. And so that's just something that we need to be aware of, that they should be held to the same standards as siblings. Because there are few opportunities to participate fully in a family or a neighborhood or a community, our children often do not experience a sense of ownership or partnership in the things that happen there. So again, keeping them included, making them part of the team. If our children have difficulties in social interactions or have had a repetition of negative experiences, then they're more than likely not going to try it again. You know, that fool me once, shame on you kind of attitude. And so we need to make sure that they do, you know, keep on and give it a whirl again and realize that that is not, that things happen like that, you know, that's part of life, and that if we give it a go again, the outcome may be different. Another issue that's important concerns the concept of distance hearing and incidental learning. Because hearing is a distal sense, it enables us to monitor what's happening away from our bodies while we may be having a conversation or listening to a conversation. And it enables us to learn casually and incidentally. In hearing at a distance or overhearing and listening to conversations at home or in the environment, in the classroom and community, it enables us to learn about the culture, social conditions, and human interactions. Because of that overhearing, they're able to gauge whether or not mom and dad over the phone are having an argument or if things are all good, and they can kind of get the temperature before dad comes home of what the rest of the evening is going to be like. But without that, the children aren't as prepared as maybe a hearing child may be. Overhearing conversations helps us gain empathy and learn about how people really do life. In fact, literature in development psychology teaches us that 90% of what very young children know about the world is learned casually. Another factor is how close we stand or sit to one another. Also sends an emotional message. If somebody kind of steps into somebody else's personal space, it can cause either that person to go from slightly irritated to outraged. And there have been studies that have videotaped situations just like these, and afterwards those folks were interviewed about their impressions, and they describe the people that step too closely as being aggressive. Research shows that first impressions form within 2 minutes and become locked in within 4. and that unfortunately it can take 6 to 8 subsequent interactions to overcome a bad first impression. That's a lot of work for our children to undo and really struggle with, and maybe be the cause of a friendship not starting up. And, you know, that just goes to show why it is so hard with them, with their peers, to truly understand what is happening. So this is a little bit why we're talking about all this, to kind of gain some tools so that we can help our children and others in their social environments. There's a little misunderstanding about the value of socialization. We tend to think that party time is just a perk, but if it's used as a teaching tool, there are a long list of benefits that can be realized. Interaction as opposed to observation allows children to get a more in-depth perspective. They understand that it's more than just words, and it's necessary for the cognitive development. Many times, a conscious effort is necessary to provide this. It is only through interaction with other children that the children learn the necessary life skills of negotiation, agreeing to disagree, compromising. These interactions are with adults, and they may always look at the adult as the person that they should not talk back to and respect. And while we appreciate that, with their peers, they have to learn how to compromise, or they have to learn that, okay, I don't agree with you, and, you know, let's just leave it at that. The speaker's tone of voice, if it's not conveyed, the child gets a very gray kind of picture, interpretation of what's happening. So over time, children can kind of develop a flat affect. Socialization gives them the sense of who they are in the world and in relationship to others. Parents need to be a part of this mix. The school cannot and shouldn't do it alone. They need to the parents need to teach how important the early communication is and be given the support in achieving that. Parents also need to know how important it is to have high expectations for social interaction. Sometimes it's easier for us to let things slide than take the time to intervene, especially in unacceptable behavior. Explanations of why we interact in an unexpected way are also important, although sometimes the old tried and true, because I said so, it has to happen. Home environments of most deaf and hard of hearing children offer a restricted range of interpersonal reactions when compared to hearing families. Many do not have an effective communication system, therefore they cannot teach their children how to behave socially. And so it just comes back to it all starts with communication. And if that isn't working, then make some changes. If you can't communicate with your child, then how do you expect others to? So being able to communicate with others is very vital to social and emotional development. So that's why we need to have opportunities for our children to be able to socialize with others and share experiences and their frustrations and successes. Group activity centered around social and emotional ideas is also helpful. For instance, ISD has a program in the elementary area designed to teach specific social skills. The program is called PAPS, but they're really seeing some great success with this because children are able to communicate their emotions and their needs and have less aggression. Having those words to express their feelings means that you have to act out less to get your point across, so they're reducing bad behaviors. Modeling acceptable behavior in a situation that is non-threatening and without the emotional stimulus that might cause an incident helps the children think about their actions. They are learning what they need to do to calm themselves down and when to calm down. So backing up, realizing our children do not pick up the little nuances of personal relationships or manners or politeness through their incidental learning. So you got to remember to put emotion into your communication to help children learn to express theirs in an acceptable way. Children are sometimes surprised to find out adults, especially teachers, feel angry or sad. I remember this past year, Jack had walked in on his teacher during a break, and she was crying at her desk. And he was surprised to find out that his teacher seemed fine all day, but was really torn up inside because of something that was happening with one of her own kids at home. Modeling for them how you think through a problem helps the children realize that if you think before you react, then you usually can get out of a bad situation. No matter what the emotion, talk about it in its situation. Talk with the children about what makes them feel angry or sad, bored, excited. Some things that you can do is you can make a feelings board with emotions and behaviors on it from real situations, such as I felt sad when the boy didn't want to play with me, or I was happy because I got a good grade, or Dad was helpful when he tied my shoe. And your child can allow to move these pictures and manipulate them to share their emotions and share what they're feeling and thinking and seeing. So this slide here shows different behaviors and what it means to have that behavior and how, basically you can explain it or teach it to them. So for friendliness, we want to teach them to be positive, polite, and kind. Sharing means that we help others, but we also defend others and take turns. Playing, we're open to learning new games, not just the games that we're great at, and we want to play fair. Obedience, listening to adults and knowing what the difference is between tattling and sharing information that keeps others safe. Aggression, it's not polite to hit or yell, and that we need to make sure we try to get along. Some other qualities are that they're a good character. They're smart, dependable, and respectful. That they have humor. They're funny and fun to be with, but not to the point where they're the jokester in class. And similarity, making sure that they have similar interests as their peers, and they know what others like and know of others, and they're not so self-absorbed. So taking speculation of the question, what do we need to do to get to the next level? The more you know about your child's world, the more you can create those teachable moments and allow for carryover at home and in school. So one of the ways that you can do this is volunteering in their school activities, in their classroom. It gives you an opportunity to see what they're struggling with and what they do well. It also shows your child that they're important to you because you took time out of your day to be there and be part of their day. And it also shows that it's good to interact with others and help them and do something without expecting something in return. So you are being a role model for them. And these obviously are qualities that we would love for our children to take on as well. The more your child's teacher and classmates and coaches are informed, it allows them to get past the hearing loss. So just as I had to share with Jack's friends about Marco Polo, it was also refreshing because hearing loss isn't an issue and isn't something that they think about when they think of Jack. So, it's a double-edged sword, I guess. Inform the classroom and friends what the equipment does and what it looks like. Make them comfortable and understanding. And this can also come back to help you out because if something gets lost on the playground, they know what they're looking at and looking for. There's no mystery. And it really shows that the student is not the hearing loss, that your child's unique. So make sure besides the hearing loss that you share your passions and interests of your child. Build this into your little demonstration. Make it fun and informative. Make it, all-encompassing. The other thing, too, that you can do is to make a troubleshooting book. And we'll discuss this a little bit later, but it's a great tool for that teacher to have. So who do you think are role models for your child? You know, unfortunately, anyone can make an impression on our children, good or bad, but it's up to you to facilitate the relationships with the ideal role models. And remembering that through role modeling, it also starts with you and your family. I really can't stress enough the value of deaf mentors. Proper role models allow us to help us understand deafness and deaf culture, help us accept a child with hearing loss, give us strategies for working with our child. They can also help us increase our sign language skills if that's something that we want to do, help increase social skills of our children. Let the child know that hearing loss is not going to go away and that he will grow up or she will grow up to be an adult who is deaf or hard of hearing. And then let the child know that whatever they dream of being, that it could be possible. You know, and going back a little bit to them understanding that they will grow into this adult with a hearing loss. Back in the day, children with hearing loss were separated and sent away to schools or were in schools with other children who had hearing loss. And there wasn't a lot of socialization, not a lot of role models. I think it wasn't focused on like we really try to today. And so when children were growing up, they really thought that they were going to die before they became an adult because they never saw any adults with hearing loss. So just keep that in the back of your mind when you're thinking role models, that they need to see somebody older than them utilizing amplification and similar communication modes so that they can gather a better understanding of my life is going to continue and I'm going to be successful too. There is a deaf mentor program through early intervention, but if your child's already out of early intervention, there are clubs and social gatherings and organizations such as ARMED. And ARMED stands for Adult Role Models and Education of the Deaf. And it's a program through the Chicago Hearing Society that brings deaf and hard of hearing individuals to classrooms to talk about their jobs and their careers. Again, just showing our children that anything is possible. So at some time we need to let our children go. Now, you know, we're not going to push them out of an airplane, as this guy here is free falling. But, you know, this is why we're talking about this. We want to give them the tools that they need so that they can try it on their own. And we're going to talk a little bit about a model called the gradual release of responsibility. And this allows us to transition our child from what the parent being the primary responsible party to the end of the child taking on that responsibility. So I know that this is a little blurry. It was a cut and paste here, but the link to this PDF here is at the bottom of the screen. And I really like this. It really showed the I do, we do, you do gradual release. And again, so it starts with you modeling it for your child, and then, okay, let's do this together, and then why don't you try it on your own? And so many times we may skip a step and maybe don't get the effect that we were thinking. So consider doing this next time you're working with your child on something. And to kind of round this thought out comes this Chinese proverb, tell me and I'll forget, show me and I may remember, but involve me and I'll understand. And I think it's just a really great way to summarize that I do, we do, you do, gradual release. So independence. We want our children to kind of make sure that they can continue to form relationships and do things on their own. So what are some of the keys to doing so? But understanding also that these keys, that mistakes will happen and it's okay. Pick yourself up and move on and help your child do that and realize that that's part of our journey. Making sure they understand what's socially appropriate. Helping your child make age-appropriate choices. I don't know about the rest of you, but Video games make me cringe every time we go to the store because I can't tell you how many times he wants to choose a video game that is not, doesn't have a rating that's appropriate for him. And, there you are, the awful parent, because you've said no to a game that probably his friends have. But if you stick with it and they realize why, the next time you go to the store, there may not be that fight. And I have to tell you that he realizes that now, and, he puts it down and moves on. Letting your child make mistakes and experiencing natural consequences. Making sure you point out cause and effect of things. Okay, because you were waving your arms at dinner, it caused your cup to fall over, and it spilled your drink all over your pants. Understanding that maybe waving your arms at dinner is not an appropriate place to be doing it. Making sure that they have those role models. Giving them responsibilities, chores, and then rewards for that work as they grow. Encouraging them to act on their own behalf, even if it's just ordering their drink at the dinner table at a restaurant. Giving them little steps to do things. And balancing trust with that accountability. So, taking it straight from the source, some teens who had hearing loss shared things that are difficult for them and things that they struggle with. And so the more we can kind of understand this as hearing parents and understanding what situations may be more difficult or annoying to our child allows us to teach our children what to do in these situations and when that happens. And through this understanding of pre-teaching or modeling, it could also prevent possible behavioral issues that could come about from situations like these. So these teens share that it's difficult socially. It's because it's hard for them to understand someone when it's noisy, or when your friends try to talk to them when they're too far away, or when friends think that they're ignoring them because I didn't hear them when they were talking to me and did not respond appropriately. Sometimes I misunderstand what people are talking about. One thing that you can do is every time your child and you have a misunderstanding in a word or a discussion, write those down. You'd be surprised how many come about where they thought you said this and really you said that. And it will give you a better perspective, because sometimes I feel like I get too far away or too accustomed or comfortable in the situation, and I need that perspective back. Another tip was that I can't lip read in the dark, which means then I don't understand what people are saying. So I've heard many times when children are part of team sports at school and they're taking a bus back and forth from the team sports, and in the wintertime it gets dark earlier, and so then it's dark and they're traveling, and the bus driver, of course, does not want the lights on while they're driving because then that's distracting. So all their friends are having conversations, but they are having a more difficult time carrying on with their friends. It's also disturbing when they get comments such as never mind or forget it or are you deaf? And I can understand that those comments may come from peers, but sometimes I find that relatives also do that. And, you got to take a step back and say, okay, there's a lack of communication here. We need to move ahead and work through it, because I know I wouldn't want to be the one that was told forget it. So, what tools do we need for success? What does it look like to teach our children socialization and where these opportunities can happen? There are 8 essential steps when you teach your children social skills. First, you want to describe the skill. We don't want the kid to be in the dark. So today, if you're going to be talking about sharing, then let them know that. Show when it is used. Model the behavior. If you're in the classroom or helping out in the classroom, involving the other kids or the teacher. question the child about the skill. So clarifying, and again, teaching our children clarifying is a great skill that they can bring into throughout their life. If they don't understand it, if they don't hear it, then let's ask again. Let's clarify it. Provide opportunities to use it and remind them ahead of the time what is going to be happening and what they're going to be practicing or trying out. Appropriate praise and feedback. Again, opportunities for it to carry over, not just a one-time deal. You know, okay, we've had our day of sharing. He's got it down pat. I don't need to talk about sharing ever again. That's not just the way it goes. Reinforce and encourage attempts. Again, remembering if they have a bad interaction once or twice, that may put a bad taste in their mouth and they may not want to try it again. But encourage them to do so. Maybe share experiences that you have had so they realize that it isn't easy for you either and that you don't give up and that you have to give it a go even though it might not be something that you want to do. Give children as many opportunities as possible to interact with others. And remember, again, helping them prepare for the activity, whether you role play, what may happen, and then give them help with their role in the interaction so they'll know what to expect. So here are some opportunities for social interaction. Recreation, activities, play groups, sports, participating in art, like the theater, charity work, summer camp, mentoring. Again, these are various ages here, and corresponding with pen pals. And you might not think of pen pals being a social opportunity, but it's a really great way for our children to learn what appropriate responses are in conversation and getting the flow of conversation. So it can be a social opportunity. So maybe you've come across something that your child can participate in to get some social interaction, be with peers. So now what? Some suggestions that you can do too is maybe see if at school one class can plan a party for another class. You know, pen pals with a different school. But the parties are just an overall great way for children to interact and have fun. Again, that modeling piece of things. And again, not every guest at that party may be an ideal model for our children, but again, it gives you an opportunity to encourage friendships in the ones that are good models, but also point out behaviors that are maybe not appropriate. So we all don't learn the same, and this is the same for our kids. So aside from talking about the skills and behaviors and scenarios, or showing them through books or video clips, you know, even using things on YouTube, or maybe even creating your own videos. How fun would that be? Make your own video that they can watch. Children love to watch themselves. And these days with video capabilities on our telephones, it's easier to do that than ever. You can create an experience book or troubleshooting books. You take photos of different steps so they can independently complete what they need to get done. So even from getting dressed, you can take pictures of, okay, first we put on our underwear, and then we put on our shorts, and then our shirt and socks and shoes. Or maybe for taking care of their own amplification equipment. Take photos of the different steps. Okay, this is how we remove the batteries. This is what we do with the batteries. This is where our amplification goes, and you know, if you utilize a dry aid kit. Different things like that. And those also can be brought over into the classroom and, you know, be a great tool if your kid is in the mainstream and that teacher is not used to typically working with a child with hearing loss and isn't as familiar with the equipment. That could be a great tool for them as well. But you don't have to think of always creating these experience books just for equipment. You could do an experience book for the zoo or a birthday party or different places where you interact with people. On top of that, it's just a great language building tool. The more time that is focused on your child and their hearing loss, it draws attention that there's something different. It may cause your child not to report when equipment isn't working because they don't want to miss out on the class party because they can't hear right now. So make sure you take that out of the equation. Help everyone be comfortable with the equipment. So identifying those parts through the troubleshooting books or those tools allows your child to kind of step up to the plate and be responsible for their own items, becoming their own technology experts. So overall, what is important? You really want to focus, again, on your child. You want to make sure that they understand that you believe in them. You trust them. You know that they can take care of it and handle it. You're there to listen to whatever their needs are. You're there to care for them. And most importantly, they're very important to you. You love them no matter what. Overall, I just want to share that deafness and hearing loss affects communication, and communication is crucial for developing social relationships. However, you can be sure that your deaf or hard of hearing child will find ways to express themselves and reach out to others and form friendships. Perhaps these friendships may be different in some ways than you had when you were a child, or from those that maybe your hearing children have. But if your child is happy, confident, and has an enriching relationship, that is what is truly important. Are there any questions? Spooky. Well, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording.